Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the stars through the main screen. His ship was small compared to the massive warships that other species used. Only 127 people worked on the Liberty, and most of them were scientists, not soldiers. They had come to the Nexus sector to study old ruins and collect data about the strange energy readings in this part of space. Jake was a calm man with gray hair and steady blue eyes. He had been exploring space for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like what the sensors were showing him now. Chief Engineer Lisa Park walked up to him, holding a datapad in her hands. Her face looked worried. "Captain, we have a big problem," Lisa said. "Long-range sensors are picking up 847 ships heading straight for us. They are Zephyrian collective vessels, and they are moving in attack formation." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Zephyrians were known across the galaxy as fierce warriors. They had blue skin, 4 arms, and no patience for other species. Recently, humans and Zephyrians had been fighting over territory near the border systems. But the Liberty was not a warship. It was just a research vessel with basic shields and only 2 small weapons. "How long until they reach us?" Jake asked. 30 minutes, maybe less," Lisa replied. "Their lead ship is huge. It must be their command vessel." Jake turned to his tactical officer, Danny Cruz. Danny was young but smart, and he knew more about weapons than anyone else on the ship. "Danny, what are our options?" Danny checked his console and shook his head. "Not good, Captain. We have standard shields and 2 plasma cannons. Against 847 warships, we would last maybe 5 minutes." The bridge crew looked scared. Amy Foster, their pilot, gripped the controls tighter. Dr. Ben Carter, the medical officer, was already preparing the sickbay for casualties. Science Officer Kate Davis was running scans, trying to find something that might help them. "Captain," said Ryan Bell, the communications officer, "I am receiving a message from the lead Zephyrian ship." "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The main screen changed to show Admiral Corvin Thax, the most feared commander in the Zephyrian fleet. His blue face had scars from many battles, and his 4 arms moved as he spoke. Behind him, Jake could see the bridge of a massive warship filled with weapons and soldiers. "Human vessel," Admiral Thax said in a deep voice. "I am Admiral Corvin Thax of the Zephyrian Collective. You are surrounded by my fleet. Your species has become a threat to the peace of this galaxy. Today we will make an example of you. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Jake stepped forward. His crew watched him, waiting to see what he would do. He knew that surrender meant death anyway. The Zephyrians did not take prisoners. "Admiral Thax," Jake said calmly. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the USS Liberty. We are on a peaceful scientific mission. We have no weapons that could threaten your fleet. We are not soldiers. We are explorers." Admiral Thax laughed, a sound like metal scraping against stone. "Peaceful? Your species has been taking our territory and challenging our authority. No more. Prepare to die, human." The screen went black. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. He had to make a choice. They could try to run, but the Zephyrian ships were faster. They could try to hide, but there was nowhere to go in empty space. Or they could stand and fight, even though they had no chance of winning. "All hands. This is the captain," Jake said, into the ship's communication system. "We are about to face impossible odds. I will not lie to you. We are one small ship against an entire fleet. But we are humans, and humans do not give up. We will fight, and we will show these aliens what we are made of." Lisa Park ran to the engine room to prepare their power systems. Amy Foster started, warming up the engines. Danny Cruz checked their weapons, even though they seemed useless against so many enemies. Dr. Ben Carter made sure the medical bay was ready. Kate Davis kept running her scans, looking for any advantage they might have. "Captain," Kate called out, "I am getting strange readings from the star system. There are old structures hidden in the asteroids and on some of the planets. They are very old, maybe millions of years. Can they help us?" Jake asked. "I do not know yet," Kate said, "but the energy patterns are unlike anything I have ever seen." The Zephyrian fleet arrived like a storm of metal and fire. 847 ships surrounded the tiny Liberty. The smallest Zephyrian vessel was twice the size of the human ship. Their flagship was like a floating city, covered in weapons and armor. "All ships open fire," Admiral Thax ordered. The space around the Liberty filled with energy beams and plasma bolts. The attack was so intense that it looked like a star was being born. Any normal ship would have been destroyed in seconds. But something impossible happened. The Liberty's shields held. Not only did they hold, but they seemed to grow stronger under the attack. The energy from the Zephyrian weapons was being absorbed and redirected. The human ship sat in the middle of the firestorm, completely undamaged. "What is happening?" Admiral Thax screamed at his weapons officer. "I do not know, Admiral," the officer replied. "Our sensors show that their shields are actually gaining power from our attacks." On the Liberty's bridge, Jake stared at his displays in amazement. "Lisa, how is this possible?" Lisa's voice came through the communication system from the engine room. "Captain, I have never seen anything like this. Our shields are running on some kind of new energy pattern. It is like they are learning from each attack and adapting." Jake smiled for the first time since the enemy fleet had arrived. "Then let us see what else this ship can do. Amy, take us forward. Danny, target their lead ships. It is time to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humans." The USS Liberty moved toward the enemy fleet, its shields glowing brighter with each attack. The hunt had begun, but now it was unclear who was the hunter and who was the prey. The battle had been going on for 2 hours now, and Admiral Thax could not believe what he was seeing. His mighty fleet had thrown everything they had at one small human ship, and it was still there. Not only was it still there, but it was fighting, back with deadly accuracy. "Status report," Admiral Thax demanded from his weapons officer. "Admiral, we have lost 43 ships so far. The human vessel seems to know exactly where to hit us for maximum damage. Their 2 small weapons are destroying our largest warships with single shots." Thax slammed his fist on his command chair. This was impossible. How could one tiny research ship stand against his entire armada? On the Liberty, Captain Jake Morrison watched his crew work with amazing skill. Something had changed in all of them since the battle started. They were moving faster, thinking clearer, and working together like they had one shared mind. Lisa Park was in the engine room, her hands flying over the controls. She was doing things with their power systems that should not have been possible. The ship's experimental quantum conduits were handling energy loads far beyond their design limits, but instead of breaking down, they seemed to be getting stronger. "Captain," Lisa called through the communication system, "I am reading power levels that our instruments cannot even measure. It is like the ship is pulling energy from somewhere else, somewhere outside normal space." Amy Foster was at the pilot controls, moving the Liberty through space in ways that defied physics. She was making the ship dance between enemy fire, spinning, and turning so fast that it should have torn apart. But somehow the ship held together. Her hands moved over the controls without her even thinking about it, as if the ship was telling her where to go. "Amy, how are you doing this?" Jake asked. "I do not know, Captain," Amy replied, never taking her eyes off her controls. "It is like I can feel where their shots will be before they fire them. The ship wants to move in certain directions, and when I let it, we avoid all their attacks." Danny Cruz was at his tactical station, firing the Liberty's weapons with impossible precision. Each shot from their small plasma cannons was hitting enemy ships in exactly the right spot to cause maximum damage. Large Zephyrian warships were exploding from hits that should have barely scratched their armor. "Danny, their shield should be protecting them from our weapons," Jake said. "I know, Captain," Danny replied, "but I can see weak points in their shield patterns. It is like I can see right through their defenses to the vulnerable spots underneath, Doctor." Ben Carter was monitoring the crew's vital signs from the medical bay. What he was seeing amazed him. Under the extreme stress of battle, the human crew was not breaking down. Instead, they were becoming stronger and faster. Their brain activity was off the charts, and their reaction times were 3 times faster than normal. "Captain, you need to see this," Dr. Carter called. "The crew's biological readings are incredible. It is like the stress of combat is unlocking hidden abilities in all of us." Science Officer Kate Davis was still scanning the star system around them. The old structures she had detected earlier were becoming clearer now. As the battle continued, more and more ancient technology was becoming visible to her sensors. "Captain, I am finding massive structures throughout this system," Kate reported. "They are old, very old, maybe 10 million years or more, and they are all connected by some kind of energy network." "Are they dangerous to us?" Jake asked. "I do not think so," Kate said. "In fact, I think they might be trying to help us. Every time we take damage, I see energy pulses from these ancient structures. It is almost like they are sending us power." The Zephyrian fleet was starting to panic. Ships that had never retreated from any battle were now trying to fall back from the small human vessel. But every time they tried to escape, the Liberty seemed to know exactly where they were going. "Admiral," one of his captains called on the communication channel. "My ship is badly damaged. Request permission to withdraw for repairs." "No one retreats," Admiral Thax screamed. "We have them outnumbered 800 to 1. Keep firing." But the truth was becoming clear to everyone. In the Zephyrian fleet, they were not fighting just one ship anymore. Something else was helping the humans. Something far more powerful than any technology they had ever seen. Ryan Bell, the communications officer, was listening to the enemy messages. The fear in their voices was growing stronger with each passing minute. "Captain, the enemy ships are reporting system failures and power drains," Ryan said. "They think we have some kind of new weapon that is attacking their computers." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was working with perfect coordination, as if they had been training together for years instead of just a few months. Each person knew exactly what the others were going to do before they did it. "Kate, keep scanning those ancient structures," Jake ordered. "I think they might be the key to understanding what is happening to us." Kate's scans were showing more details about the old technology. The structures were not just buildings or machines. They were part of a vast defense network that covered the entire star system. And somehow the Liberty had activated it just by being there. "Captain, I think these structures are recognizing us," Kate said with excitement in her voice. "The energy patterns they are using match our own quantum signatures. It is like they think we belong here." Lisa Park's voice came from the engine room again. "Captain, our shields are now running at 400% of maximum capacity. This should not be possible, but the ship is handling it like it was designed for this kind of power." Another wave of Zephyrian ships attacked, firing everything they had at the Liberty. The space around the human ship lit up with energy beams and explosions. When the light faded, the Liberty was still there, its shields glowing brighter than ever. Danny Cruz fired back, and 3 more enemy ships exploded. The impossible accuracy of the human weapons was driving the Zephyrians to desperation. "Admiral Thax," Jake said, opening a communication channel to the enemy flagship. "You came here to destroy one human ship. How is that working for you?" Admiral Thax appeared on the screen, his blue face twisted with rage and fear. "What are you? How are you doing this?" Jake smiled calmly. "We are humans, Admiral, and you just learned why that matters." The battle was far from over, but the tide had clearly turned. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy was about to learn that humans were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Kate Davis had been studying ancient civilizations her whole life, but she had never seen anything like what her scanners were showing her now. The star system was filled with technology that was millions of years old, and all of it was waking up because of the battle. "Captain, I need to tell you something important," Kate called out from her science station. "These structures belong to a race called the Forerunners. I have read about them in old archaeological reports. They disappeared millions of years ago, but they left behind defense networks and systems all across the galaxy." Jake kept his eyes on the tactical display, where Danny was targeting another enemy ship. "What does that mean for us, Kate?" "It means we might have just activated the most powerful defensive system ever built," Kate replied. "But I need time to figure out how to control it properly." The Liberty shook as another wave of Zephyrian attacks hit their shields. Lisa Park's voice came through the communication system from the engine room. "Captain, our power systems are being pushed beyond all limits. I do not know how much longer we can keep this up." Jake made a quick decision. Kate, you have whatever time you need. Amy, keep us moving. Danny, make every shot count. We need to buy Kate time to figure out these ancient systems. Kate's fingers flew over her controls as she tried to understand the Forerunner technology. The ancient systems were responding to her, but she needed to learn their language and their methods. It was like trying to solve a puzzle while someone was shooting at her. Admiral Thax was becoming desperate. His fleet had lost over 100 ships, and the human vessel was still there, still fighting, still impossible to destroy. His officers were starting to question his orders. Admiral, his second-in-command said quietly, "Perhaps we should consider withdrawing. We are losing too many ships." "No," Thax screamed. "We will not be defeated by one tiny human ship. Order all remaining vessels to concentrate their fire. Destroy them now." But even as he gave the order, Thax could see that something was changing in the space around them. New objects were appearing on his sensors, large structures that had been hidden before. They were coming out of asteroids and rising from the surfaces of planets throughout the system. On the Liberty, Kate's scans were showing the same thing. "Captain, the Forerunner defense platforms are activating. There are dozens of them, and they are huge." Jake watched his screen as massive shapes emerged from their hiding places. Each platform was the size of a small moon, covered in weapons and energy systems that had been sleeping for millions of years. "Are they friendly to us?" Jake asked. Kate was working frantically to understand the ancient computer systems. "I think so, Captain. The Forerunner network is scanning us, and it seems to recognize something in our quantum signatures. It is treating us as authorized users." Ryan Bell suddenly looked up from his communications console. "Captain, I am receiving a message. But it is not from the Zephyrians. It is coming from one of those ancient platforms." "Put it through," Jake ordered. A voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect English but with a strange musical quality. "Greetings, inheritors. The Forerunner Defense Network welcomes you. State your intentions in this protected system." Jake looked around at his crew, then stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel USS Liberty. We came here on a peaceful scientific mission. We are being attacked by a hostile fleet." "Understood, Inheritor Morrison. Hostile forces detected. Defense protocols initiated. Please maintain your current position while we neutralize the threat." Kate's eyes went wide as she watched her scanner readings. "Captain, every single Forerunner platform is powering up. The energy levels are incredible." The first platform fired, and a beam of pure energy shot across space to hit a Zephyrian warship. The enemy vessel did not just explode. It simply disappeared, turned into particles of dust in an instant. Admiral Thax watched in horror as his ships began to vanish under the ancient weapons. "All ships, retreat! Retreat now!" But it was too late. The Forerunner platforms had surrounded the entire Zephyrian fleet. Wherever the alien ships tried to run, they found massive ancient weapons waiting for them. Ship after ship disappeared under the unstoppable firepower. "Admiral," his weapons officer called out in panic. "Our shields cannot stop their weapons. Nothing can stop their weapons. We need to surrender." "Zephyrians do not surrender," Thax replied, but his voice was no longer full of confidence. On the Liberty, Kate was learning more about the ancient systems with each passing minute. "Captain, I think I understand now. The Forerunners built these networks to protect developing civilizations from aggressive species. They have been waiting for millions of years for someone to activate them." "And we activated them just by being here?" Jake asked. "Not exactly," Kate said. "I think it was our reaction to being attacked. The network sensed that we were peaceful, explorers being threatened by warships, and it responded to protect us." Dr. Ben Carter was still monitoring the crew's biological readings. "Captain, something amazing is happening to all of us. Our brain patterns are synchronizing with each other and with something else, something very old and very powerful." Amy Foster was still piloting the ship, but now she felt connected to something much larger than the Liberty. "Captain, I can feel the ancient systems. They are showing me things, teaching me things. It is like they have been waiting for us." Danny Cruz was also experiencing the connection. "Captain, I can see the entire battlefield through the Forerunner sensors. I know where every enemy ship is and what they are going to do before they do it. Lisa Park called from the engine room. Captain, our engines are now connected to the Forerunner power grid. We have access to energy sources that I cannot even begin to understand. The battle was turning into a massacre. The Zephyrian fleet was being destroyed ship by ship, and there was nothing Admiral Thax could do to stop it. His mighty armada was helpless against technology that was older than his entire civilization. Captain Morrison, the Forerunner voice spoke again. The hostile fleet is nearly neutralized. Do you wish us to destroy the remaining vessels, or would you prefer to offer them terms of surrender? Jake thought carefully about his answer. The Zephyrians had come here to kill him and his crew. They had shown no mercy and expected none in return. But Jake was human, and humans could choose to be better than their enemies. Offer them a chance to surrender, Jake said. But make it clear that if they refuse, they will be destroyed. Kate looked up from her science station with wonder in her eyes. Captain, I am beginning to understand what we have become. We are not just the crew of one ship anymore. We are the inheritors of the greatest defensive network in the galaxy. The Forerunners have been waiting millions of years for a species like us to arrive. The ancient platforms turned their weapons toward the remaining Zephyrian ships, waiting for Admiral Thax to make his choice. The hunter had definitely become the hunted, but now the prey had the power to decide the hunter's fate. Jake opened a communication channel to the enemy flagship. Admiral Thax, this is your last chance. Surrender now, or be destroyed by forces you cannot comprehend. The fate of the Zephyrian fleet and perhaps the future of the galaxy hung in the balance of one alien admiral's decision. Admiral Thax stared at the main screen of his flagship, watching ancient weapons larger than cities point directly at his remaining ships. His mighty armada of 847 vessels was now down to less than 200, and those survivors were damaged and scared. In all his years of conquest, he had never faced anything like this. Admiral, his communications officer said with a shaking voice. The human captain is waiting for your answer. Thax looked around his bridge at his officers. These were the same Zephyrians who had conquered dozens of star systems and defeated every enemy they had ever faced. Now they looked like frightened children, staring at weapons they could not understand or fight. How is this possible? Thax asked quietly. How did one small human ship do this to us? On the Liberty, Captain Jake Morrison was experiencing something that no human had ever felt before. Through the Forerunner network, he could sense every ship in the system, every weapon, every piece of ancient technology. But more than that, he could feel his crew's minds connected to his own and to something vast and ancient. Captain, Kate Davis called from her science station, I am learning more about the Forerunners with each minute. They were not just builders of weapons. They were guardians, protectors of life and civilization. And somehow they chose us to carry on their mission. Danny Cruz was working at his tactical console, but his awareness extended far beyond his instruments. Captain, I can see through the sensors of every Forerunner platform. The Zephyrian ships are trying to find a way to escape, but there is nowhere for them to go. We have them completely surrounded. Amy Foster was still piloting the Liberty, but she felt like she was flying through a space much larger than the star system around them. Captain, the ancient network is showing me things. Maps of the galaxy, locations of other Forerunner systems, places where this technology still waits to be activated. Dr. Ben Carter was monitoring not just his crew's vital signs, but something much more amazing. Captain, our brain patterns are evolving in real time. We are developing new neural pathways that let us interface with technology that is millions of years old. It is like we were always meant to do this. Lisa Park's voice came from the engine room, filled with wonder. Captain, I am connected to power sources that span multiple dimensions. The Forerunners did not just build machines. They built gateways to energy that exists outside normal space and time. Ryan Bell was listening to communications from across the system, including signals that were not coming from any ship. Captain, the Forerunner network is broadcasting our victory to other systems. Ancient platforms throughout the galaxy are waking up and waiting for instructions. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. In a few hours, he had gone from being the captain of one small research ship to being connected to the most powerful defensive network in the known galaxy. But with that power came choices that could affect the future of every species in space. "Admiral Thax," Jake said, opening the communication channel again. "I am still waiting for your answer. Will you surrender? Or do I need to let the Forerunner platforms finish what you started?" Admiral Thax appeared on the screen, and Jake could see that the proud Zephyrian commander was struggling with emotions he had never felt before: fear, confusion, and something that might have been respect. "Captain Morrison," Thax said slowly, "I have conquered 50 star systems and defeated 100 different species, but I have never seen anything like what you have done here today. How did you awaken these ancient weapons? How do you control them?" Jake considered his answer carefully. "We did not awaken them, Admiral. They awakened because we needed protection. The Forerunners built these systems to defend peaceful species from aggressive ones. When you attacked us without cause, you triggered their response. But you are just humans," Thax said. "Your species is young and weak. How can you interface with technology that is millions of years old?" Kate Davis looked up from her console. "Captain, I think I can answer that. The Forerunner records are showing me something incredible. They did not just build defense networks. They were looking for a specific type of species to inherit their technology. A species with the right combination of creativity, adaptability, and moral judgment." "And we are that species?" Jake asked. "It appears so," Kate replied. "The quantum patterns in human brains are uniquely compatible with Forerunner computer systems. We can think the way they thought, make decisions the way they would have made them." Danny Cruz was studying the tactical situation through the ancient sensors. "Captain, the remaining Zephyrian ships are trying to send messages to their home worlds. They are telling them about what happened here." "Let them," Jake said. "The galaxy needs to know that humans are under the protection of the Forerunner network now." Admiral Thax was listening to reports from his surviving captains. Every one of them was telling him the same thing. Their weapons were useless against the ancient platforms, their shields could not protect them, and their only hope was to surrender to the humans they had come to destroy. "Captain Morrison," Thax said finally, "I have a question for you. If I surrender, what will you do with my ships and my crews?" Jake thought about the question. The Zephyrians had come here to commit genocide, to wipe out every human on the Liberty just to send a message to other species. By the laws of war, he would be justified in destroying every one of their ships. But Jake was human, and humans had something that many other species lacked. They had the ability to choose mercy even when revenge would be easier. "Admiral," Jake said, "you came here to destroy us because you saw humans as a threat to your empire. But we are not conquerors like you. We explore, we learn, we protect those who need protection. If you surrender now, your ships will be allowed to return to your territory, but you will carry a message to your government and to the galaxy." "What message?" Thax asked. "That humanity is now the inheritor of Forerunner technology. We are the guardians of these ancient defense networks. Any species that attacks peaceful civilizations will face the same fate that you nearly faced today." The Uri bridge of the Zephyrian flagship was silent for a long moment. Finally, Admiral Thax made his decision. "All ships of the collective fleet," he broadcast on an open channel. "This is Admiral Thax. I am ordering the immediate surrender of all remaining vessels to Captain Morrison of the human ship Liberty. Lower your shields and power down your weapons." Across the Forerunner network, Jake felt the ancient systems registering the Zephyrian surrender. The platforms powered down their weapons but remained ready to fire again if needed. "Admiral," Jake said, "your ships are free to leave this system. But remember what you have learned here today. Humans are not your enemies unless you make us your enemies. We would rather be your friends." As the surviving Zephyrian ships began their long journey home, they carried with them the news that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Humanity had awakened the sleeping giants of the ancient world, and they would never be seen as a minor species again. But for Jake Morrison and his crew, this was just the beginning. They had become something new, something that had never existed before. They were humans with the power of gods, and they had to decide what to do with that power. The surviving Zephyrian ships limped away from the Nexus sector, carrying news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Admiral Thax sat in his command chair, staring at the damage reports from his fleet. Over 650 ships destroyed, and not a single human casualty. It was impossible to believe, but he had seen it with his own eyes. Captain Jake Morrison watched the enemy fleet disappear into hyperspace, then turned his attention to the ancient network that now recognized him as its commander. Through the Forerunner systems, he could sense defensive platforms throughout the galaxy beginning to activate. Humanity had just inherited the most powerful military force in known space, but Jake understood that with great power came even greater responsibility. "Kate," Jake said to his science officer, "what are you learning about the full extent of this network?" Kate Davis looked up from her console, her eyes wide with amazement. "Captain, the Forerunner Defense Network spans the entire galaxy. There are thousands of systems with hidden platforms, and all of them are now connected to us. We have become the guardians of every peaceful civilization in known space." The implications of this were staggering. Humanity had gone from being a minor species on the edge of the galaxy to being its protectors in the span of a few hours. But Jake knew that other species would not accept this change easily. Ryan Bell was monitoring communications from across the galaxy as news of the battle spread. "Captain, we are receiving messages from dozens of governments. Some are congratulating us, some are demanding explanations, and some are calling this an act of war against the established order." "What about Earth?" Jake asked. "What is our government saying?" "They are still trying to understand what happened," Ryan replied. "The president has called an emergency session of the Global Council. They want us to return home immediately for debriefing." Dr. Ben Carter was still studying the biological changes that had occurred in the crew during the battle. "Captain, I need to tell you something important. The neural changes we experienced are permanent. We are no longer exactly human anymore. We are something new, something that can interface with technology that other species cannot even understand." Amy Foster was testing the ship's new capabilities, finding that the Liberty could now travel faster than any vessel in known space. "Captain, the Forerunner network has upgraded our ship. We can travel between systems instantly using their portal technology. We could be home in minutes if we wanted to." Lisa Park called from the engine room with equally amazing news. "Captain, our power systems are now connected to the fundamental forces of the universe. We have access to energy that could power entire civilizations. We could solve every energy problem that humanity has ever had." But Jake knew that such rapid changes would frighten other species. Humans were already feared by many galactic governments because of their unpredictability and rapid technological advancement. Now they would be seen as an existential threat to the established order. "Danny," Jake said to his tactical officer, "show me the locations of all active Forerunner platforms." Danny's console displayed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, showing thousands of points of light where ancient weapons waited for commands. "Captain, we now have defensive coverage of every major trade route, every important star system, and every border between major powers. No species in the galaxy can wage war without our permission." The weight of this responsibility was enormous. Jake and his crew of 127 people now held the power to enforce peace across the galaxy, but they also held the power to dominate every other species if they chose to do so. "Captain," the Forerunner voice spoke through the ship's communication system, "the network is fully operational. What are your orders for the defense platforms?" Jake thought carefully before answering. "Continue monitoring for attacks on peaceful civilizations. Defend any species that is being attacked without cause, but do not interfere in legitimate conflicts between military forces. We are guardians, not rulers." "Understood, Inheritor Morrison. The network will act according to your moral guidelines." Over the following days, news of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. The Galactic Council called an emergency session to discuss the implications of humanity's new power. Some species demanded that humans be forced to give up control of the Forerunner network. Others argued that humanity had proven themselves worthy guardians by showing mercy to the Zephyrians. The Altarian Empire, one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy, sent a message of congratulations. Their ambassador, a being of pure energy, appeared on the Liberty's main screen. "Captain Morrison," the ambassador said in a voice like music, "the Altarians have been waiting for this day for millions of years. The Forerunners promised that one day a worthy species would inherit their legacy. We believe that humanity is that species." But not all reactions were positive. The hegemony of Krex, a militaristic alliance of warrior species, declared that they would not accept human authority over galactic affairs. Their leader, War Master Gek, broadcast a challenge across all communication channels. "The hegemony does not bow to any species, especially not to young humans who stumbled upon ancient weapons. We will test these so-called guardians and see if they have the will to use their power." Jake knew that this challenge would come eventually. Other species would need to test humanity's resolve before accepting the new reality. But he also knew that the Forerunner network would protect any peaceful civilization from aggression. 3 days after the battle with the Zephyrians, the hegemony of Krex launched an attack on the Epsilon colony, a peaceful mining world inhabited by the gentle Thessarian people. The Thessarians had no military and depended on the Galactic Council for protection. But the Galactic Council was paralyzed by political debates about humanity's new role. While the various species argued, the hegemony fleet approached the defenseless colony. "Captain," Kate called out as her sensors detected the attack. "The hegemony is bombing civilian targets on Epsilon colony. The Thessarians are calling for help." Jake did not hesitate. "Activate the nearest Forerunner platforms, protect the colony." Ancient weapons that had been hidden in the Epsilon system for millions of years suddenly came online. The hegemony fleet found themselves surrounded by technology far beyond their understanding, just as the Zephyrians had been. War Master Gek's flagship was caught in the middle of the Forerunner response. His weapons could not penetrate their shields, and his ships were being disabled one by one. But unlike Admiral Thax, Gek refused to surrender. "All ships, continue the attack," Gek ordered. "We will not be intimidated by human tricks." The Forerunner platforms responded by completely disabling the hegemony fleet, leaving their ships powerless but intact. The message was clear: aggression against peaceful species would not be tolerated. Within hours, news of the Epsilon colony incident spread across the galaxy. Humanity had used their new power not to conquer or dominate, but to protect those who could not protect themselves. This act changed the way many species viewed the human guardians. The Galactic Council finally passed a resolution recognizing humanity's role as inheritors of the Forerunner network. The vote was not unanimous, but it was enough to make the arrangement. Official Jake Morrison and his crew returned to Earth as heroes, but they knew their real work was just beginning. They had to train other humans to interface with Forerunner technology, establish protocols for using their power responsibly, and prove to the galaxy that humanity could be trusted with such incredible capabilities. Dr. Ben Carter's research showed that other humans could develop the neural pathways needed to connect with the ancient network, but it required the right combination of genetics and training. A new branch of the human military was created, called the Forerunner Guard, dedicated to operating the defensive platforms. Amy Foster became the first instructor at the new Guardian Academy, teaching other pilots how to interface with Forerunner travel systems. Lisa Park worked with scientists across Earth to understand and implement the new energy technologies. Danny Cruz helped design new defensive strategies that combined human tactics with ancient weapons. Kate Davis led archaeological expeditions to other Forerunner sites, learning more about the ancient civilization and their goals for the galaxy. Ryan Bell established communication protocols between the human government and the galactic community. And Jake Morrison became the first Guardian commander, responsible for making decisions about when and how to use the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. It was a job that no human had ever been prepared for, but it was a job that humanity would have to learn to do well. The galaxy had changed forever. Humanity was no longer just another species struggling to survive among the stars. They had become the inheritors of an ancient legacy, the guardians of peace and justice across thousands of civilizations. But with great power came great responsibility, and the true test of humanity's worthiness would not be in how they had gained this power, but in how they chose to use it in the years to come. The galaxy was watching, and history would judge whether the Forerunners had chosen their inheritors wisely. The age of human guardianship had begun, and the stars themselves would never be the same.